Welcome to Trash Talk, a podcast by Zero Waste Canada. I'm your host, Alistair McCall. I moved to Canada in 2017 from England, and I've since held a variety of roles in the waste industry, and currently sit on the Zero Waste Canada board. On this podcast, we will dive deep into the world of zero waste and the circular economy, speaking with change makers who are helping to lead us to a more waste-free, sustainable planet. Okay, Trash Talk is back. My two big passions combined here, so waste and sports. We have Nick joining us today. Nick, who are you? What's your role? And welcome to the podcast, first of all, as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Excited to have the conversation. My name's Nick Otte. I'm the Vice President of Stadium Operations with Austin FC in Austin, Texas. My role's actually evolved a little bit this week. I just got moved into an elevated position, overseeing our entire department now. So the list of things that I have my hands in is maybe longer than it was 7 days ago, but certainly a big part of the stadium experience, which is, at its core, what I'm responsible for is our sustainability initiatives and how we are connecting that to the Austin FC brand and the experience at Q2 Stadium as a whole. So excited to talk about it with you. It's been a passion of mine since I started at the club in 2021. Or gosh, 2020 going on 5 years now. Feels like that's flown by, but yeah, we've evolved a lot in that regard, and happy to get into the weeds with you on it. I'm excited for it.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's a trash podcast. So the reason you're here is to talk about true certification and what kind of happened at Stadium there. So let's kind of start back in time. So what led to becoming True Gold certified? What kind of kicked it off initially?
Yeah, it's funny. Uh, I've always defined my job back to when I was an entry level person as I'm really just the trash guy. All that I, all that all that I did when I first started in this industry was work on the behind the scenes, the housekeeping, the waste management type stuff. So that's always been, a core of what I've focused on. And again, it's grown and evolved since then, but. When I got to Austin FC and learned everything that this club is and everything that our brand is, and learned how big sustainability was as a part of that, both with the club's brand, but also, the stadium design and our relationship with our supporters and our relationship with the city of Austin. Sustainability as a whole is sort of table stakes here. And so I think my role, my job in stadium operations is to, help figure out how we can be a part of that. The building is LEED Gold certified. So through construction, however many different checkpoints we had to meet to reach that certification. But when I joined and stepped into actually operating the building, you have to figure out what does that mean once you're actually in the building and occupied, and there's people coming in, and you're, generating all this waste, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's when zero waste sort of became a target of ours. It felt a little bit like a pipe dream when we first opened, and it hadn't been anything that I've had even been able to imagine at any of my previous jobs. But, this sort of the stars aligned in terms of motivation from ownership, motivation from our supporters, motivation from the city, the resources that we have to execute all of the operations that we need to in order to be zero waste, investment from vendors, stakeholders, et cetera. And anyway, long story short, we sort of, I don't want to say stumbled through the first couple of years. I think we were still pretty successful in our zero waste journey, but hadn't really gained a ton of traction in terms of really getting to that zero waste level. And that's when we came across the True certification and the folks involved with that. And it really allowed us a pathway, both to achieve the certification, but also a pathway to stamp some legitimacy on that.
Yeah.
process.
Mm.
And so, the true process spells out all the different things you need to do to get to zero waste, all the different credits you need to achieve. And so it helped us get there, but it also helped us get there in a way that's like, gosh, there's no way to fake this because we have to achieve all these different credits to get there. And when we did get there, it's easy to, sit back and say, like, look at all these things that we did to get here and really again add some legitimacy and cement that zero waste status as a part of our stadium.
Amazing. Yeah, it's cool to hear you had support from different areas there. I mean, like hard to come by, getting that buy-in from different stakeholders there. So it's cool to hear that you, yeah, got that early on, which yeah led to achieving certification, which is great to hear. So looking at kind of what you went through to achieve certification status, what was the biggest challenge you had to get there, would you say?
Yeah, the biggest challenge, and maybe it's oversimplifying it, but truly the biggest challenge is to get to that 90% threshold,
Yeah.
to divert 90% of all the waste that we're generating in the building from the landfill. Um, you learn quickly how fragile that percentage is, maybe for lack of a better word, like how many points of failure there are along the way.
Yeah.
It's not just the end result where somebody puts the trash in the dumpster, right? There's so many steps ahead of that, even going to what are we bringing into the building to begin with? What sort of products are we purchasing to sell in our concession stands? What sort of products are we purchasing and what packaging comes with those from a shipping standpoint?
Yeah.
And I think the struggle that we had is we had all the best intentions. We thought we had certain policies in place that would, guide us to that 90% threshold, but you have one bad match where something goes wrong with the dumpster, or there's a shortage in the supply chain for compostable cups, and the percentage drops real quick, and now you're playing catch up and trying to figure out how you can improve your process to get to that number. But it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that regard. Like, it forces you to constantly improve. It forces you to constantly, I say, find success in the margins, because you know every place where you could get derailed trying to get to zero waste is something that you need to have your eye on, because the minute it goes wrong, you're gonna lose track. You're gonna lose progress and not be able to maintain what you've tried to build. So, we did a lot with our back of house sorting crew. We did a lot with our food and beverage partner to, continue to get them on board and have them support us. And they've been great from the beginning. That's been
Mm.
a huge benefit to us. But none of that took a lot of convincing. It was a lot more fine tuning than any sort of grand direction change. But yeah, long story short, we were 72-ish% our first year, 75% our third year. We were up above 80% in the year after that. I think it wasn't until we like really dove into the true process. We did some infrastructure upgrades to help us get to that 90% that we were able to get over that hump, and
Yeah.
that felt like quite the challenge, alongside all of the other policy updates and things that you need to do as a part of that process. But it was a real victory when we got to that point.
Great. Yeah. Is there one change that you're like most proud of, or a change that kind of made a huge difference to kind of get you over that level, would you say?
Yeah, I think, and it's, there's a combination of a lot of little things that got us to that point, but I
Yeah.
do think we were, and again, it speaks to the investment that we have from the top down, but we were fortunate enough in 2024 to build what we dubbed a mini material resource facility in our stadium. So we worked with Texas Disposal Systems, who is our waste management vendor. They're also a consultant on all of our zero waste operations. They operate their own recycling facility, their own compost facility, their own landfill. We were able to work with them to literally create a miniature version of their recycling facility in
Mm.
our waste collection space, which it's complete with conveyor belts, and we adjusted our dumpsters and trash chutes, and it was a big process, a big investment, that really helped us get over the hump. I think when we first started sorting waste in our back of house space, we were doing it on stationary tables in a tiny room that probably didn't have enough air conditioning. It was not a comfortable situation, not an efficient operation. But you know, building that system, was huge for us. It was, I think, innovative in the sense that it allowed us to reimagine a space that already existed in the stadium, but also, again, really just speaks to the investment that we have from the top down. I think a lot of venues, a lot of people in my position would present a plan like that and bring it to ownership and say, I need X thousands of dollars to build this system in the trash room, and probably get laughed out of the room. Where,
Yeah.
for us, it was a remarkably easy approval. It was like, hey, we could do this, and it's going to help us get to 90%, and we're going to be the first soccer specific stadium in the world to get this true certification. And it was like, great, when can you start? I'm super proud of that. I think it's certainly something that we can hang our hat on as a club, that makes us unique and helps us stand out.
Great, yeah. Having like waste sorting really is key to achieving that high diversion rate, like you were saying, and then also the cost recovered from that as well, kind of pays for itself in a way. And then I read the cool thing, the conveyor belt you have on site there. It has so food waste stays on, everything else kind of gets pulled off, which I think is a pretty cool design idea to kind of keep the messiness, let's say, of food waste as a kind of flowing stream, and then everything else is kind of pulled out and diverted appropriately, which is a cool idea, I think, design wise.
Yeah, so much of that. I mean, obviously the core goal of that particular project is to make the operation more efficient, but it's also an investment in the staff and their comfort. And again, the situation that we were in before we had that was not comfortable for them. They're having to literally sort every single piece of trash that comes through our stream. Whereas, to your point, now the food waste, which is inarguably the worst part of that, if you're literally hands on with the trash, now
Yeah.
is mostly a hands off operation, which was again a key part of that, because it only makes it easier for the staff, and you get people that don't mind coming back to do that job, and appreciate it more, and understand that we appreciate them, which only makes it more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned so fans earlier being like bought into this idea. So I'm just curious. Obviously, fans are a key part of a sports team, a stadium atmosphere. So how has this changed the experience on match days, and kind of what's the reaction been to changes coming in as part of this certification process?
Yeah, I think we're fortunate that even before we were, going down the true road, like, our fans were sort of holding us accountable, and
Mm.
we're a big driver for this, kind of at large. I I tell the story that year one, we're sending out surveys to all of our season ticket members, to gain, feedback on a whole host of different elements of our match day experience. And almost without exception, like every single time we get feedback in that survey, and it's like, hey, why isn't there a recycle can at this gate? Or, hey, I sit in this section and I couldn't find anywhere to take my compostable waste. And it's, you realize quickly that, like, this is almost a mandate, right, from our fans, because they want to feel like they're doing the right thing when they're in our building. So um, that helps to get more widespread buy-in, because if it is something coming from our fans, then it's something that all of us need to care about. And and so they've been with us from the beginning on this, in this process. So in terms of change to their match day experience, we've evolved. What we've done from a signage standpoint at all of our collection bins. We play a video on the scoreboard prior to the match that's educational, in the sense of, here's what goes in the compost, here's what goes in the recycle, here's the little bit that needs to go in the landfill. So, um, I think as the years have gone on, they've just seen more of that throughout the building, and hopefully becomes just such a consistent part of the match day experience that it almost becomes second nature for them. But
Mm.
the key part for us there is that they were a driver for that. We felt a sense of obligation to keep up and do the best we could because it was what they wanted when they were in our building.
Amazing, yeah. And do you think there'll be a time when you won't need sorting? They'll be that good at doing it themselves. You can kind of remove that conveyor belt, or will it still be like some element there, do you think? Or will it get to the point where everyone knows what's happening and it's just like a fluid process?
Yeah, I would love to say yes. I think soccer itself probably doesn't lend itself to that because there's so few timeouts, there's so few breaks. Like
Yeah.
everybody's got 15 minutes at halftime to run to the concession stand, run to the restroom, throw away what they have, get more trash, throw that away. Inevitably, there's going to be some misses there, and understandably so. We want people to get back to their seats and root on the team. So,
Yeah.
but I think even back when we were our first year, we weren't doing any sort of back of house sorting, and we were just relying on fans to make the right decisions at the bins, and then some back end sorting at the facility the waste got hauled to, and you were still above 70% through that year. So even without us intervening and literally sorting every single piece of trash, there is a success story that people are doing the right thing as much as they can,
Yeah.
and it only makes it easier. Even you know we're happy to keep sorting as long as we need to. But it's always helpful when it is mostly right by the time it gets to us back at house. And I think that's where again we're lucky that we have fans that are bought in and understand that.
Yeah, being in waste too can be pretty confusing sometimes on like where things go, like what bin certain things go, and it can change obviously sometimes too in terms of like regulations coming in, like what goes where.
Mhm.
So it can be confusing for not just fans, but yeah, just in general, it can be a confusing space to be in. Awesome, yeah. So just looking at like how you're the like, first one to do this. So curious if any other like anyone's reaching out to you for advice on their stadiums going through this process and kind of what you might say to them as, starting points or key learnings you may have found from this.
Yeah, we've got a pretty decent uh, call it network through the Green Sports Alliance, which our club is a pretty active member of. We attend the summit each year. We've had several times where we're speaking on panels or speaking in breakout groups. So it's constant conversation about this process and why it was right for us, what were the benefits, what were the challenges. I think we're certainly on the forefront in terms of soccer specific stadiums in our country, given that we're the only one with this specific certification. But I have heard that there's others in our league that are pursuing it. I do think zero waste in general is becoming a more common target, certainly as I'm sure our league continues to build new stadiums and and all the bells and whistles that come with that. I think sustainability and zero waste is always a big part of that. But in terms of specific advice, I think the advice I have is simply like kind of just go for it, right? Like
Yeah.
if you had told me when I first started at Austin FC, without knowing all the resources available, without knowing the buy-in across the board, like the prospect of getting to zero waste in a stadium environment feels impossible just with how much is going on, how quick the timelines are. Like I said earlier, how much opportunity there is for it to go wrong. But I think you learn pretty quickly through the true process specifically, but as you go through the process, that once you can sort of get all of the key stakeholders on board, and really make an approach to zero waste sort of the core thing that everyone's working to, then then it really is attainable. There's enough resources in this industry. There's enough resources in the supply chain that it is maybe more attainable than it feels. And I think a lot of stadiums or cities are finding themselves in a situation where we were, where it sort of becomes the expectation, if not all the way to zero waste, but certainly something approaching that, by the fans, by the city, by everybody involved. And so, you know, it does feel daunting at times. It does feel like a lot to gather, and it is, but I think ultimately worth it, and certainly attainable as you dive into the process.
Mm. You mentioned like new stadiums and teams coming into the league. Do you think the league may look at making zero waste like standard across the board for all new teams and current teams even like a regulation coming in possibly?
I don't know. It's a little hard to imagine in the short term, just because every city is so different in
Mm.
what resources they have, specifically from a composting standpoint. We're so fortunate that Texas Disposal Systems is here in town. They literally operate every portion of that facility that we would need them to,
Right.
compost, recycle, landfill. But if you don't have that connection, if you don't have that ability, in whatever particular city you're in, it really becomes an uphill battle, certainly in terms of investment and logistics. Not to say that it's unattainable, but I think if there was ever any sort of widespread mandate, it would have to be, a little more broad than that.
Mm.
But hopefully down the road, and I would love to think that this is the case, that all the resources around the league, all the resources around the country will, begin to catch up, so to speak. And because that is the ideal scenario, right? Is that that sort of direction is coming from the very top, and it leaves less up to chance. It leaves less up for interpretation. And it's more like, hey, if you're going to be a part of this league, if you're going to be a part of this group, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Join us. And that probably breeds more shared resources. It probably breeds, better communication and collaboration, which ultimately makes the process easy. Again, I don't know when or if we're there in the short term, but would love for that to be the case, certainly.
Yeah, like in Canada here, we're seeing things like reuse in stadiums being more popular and
Mhm.
like other innovations like that coming into play, but no one's true certified yet. So hoping to see that north of the border at some point soon.
Yeah.
Copy the template you've used down there, which would be great. Yeah. So you mentioned Green Sports Alliance just then as well. So I'm just kind of keen to kind of close off here. What's your message like kind of globally? Like how like soccer is like a massive sport, obviously, huge reach, huge impact. Why is it important for it to embrace things like zero waste and kind of send that message, across the world saying we're doing the right thing? So why is that so important, do you think?
Yeah, I think sustainability and zero waste are kind of at its core about longevity, right? It's about preserving the environment. It's about preserving the people in it. And hopefully that's something that people across the globe are invested in, right? It's something that is in everybody's best interest. So, because soccer has that unique ability to, touch nearly every inch of the globe, like it feels like the right vehicle to attach something like this to. It really lends itself to connecting to the fans. It lends itself to connecting to the communities that, the fans are a part of. And selfishly, that's a lot of the appeal to me too, right? You
Mm.
want to feel like you're doing something, bigger in your responsibilities. You want to work for a club that has aspirations to be something bigger, has aspirations to mean something to the fans, to the community, to to increase its reach to beyond just kicking the ball in the net. So I think again, because so many people are invested in soccer because so many people love the sport and devote time and energy and attention to the sport, attaching something like sustainability and zero waste that at its core is beneficial for everybody. It feels like the perfect marriage.
Yeah, yeah, great points. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for your time today, Nick. Great to chat. Yeah, soccer or football for me and waste. So thanks again. And yeah, awesome.
Yeah, sorry, I should have said football. You can edit out all of the soccer and insert football on there.